those rich people always flying off somewhere.
Welcome to the Vegan Vanguard,
a show about all things from the perspective of two revolutionary vegan women.
I'm Maureen.
And I'm Mexie. And today we're going to be talking about a number of things related to body image and gendered politics of food. And this myth of women, or I guess any femme-presenting people, having to look naturally beautiful. So we just want to give a little disclaimer to the listeners before we start that this is really like a processing session for us where we work through some of these issues around food and body image, etc., together, like in our personal lives. So with that, we also just wanted to give a content warning before we start that we will be talking about like dieting, body image, eating disorders, sizeism, body shaming, etc. So, just before we start, we just wanted to let you know that this will be on the docket for today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we want to start. Well, first of all, we wanted to announce, or maybe you should announce it.
That Mexie is a doctor. Whoop, whoop. And that I have a podcast with a doctor.
Yeah. So yeah.
And I'm so fucking proud of you.
Thank you. So I defended my dissertation. Actually, it was a while ago now. It was in December. So I am doing the revisions, but yeah, I am technically a doc, so.
Yeah. And you worked so hard, and I feel like it was a labor of love and tears.
Many tears.
Yeah. I was like, love and mostly tears.
Mostly tears. At this point, I like hate it, but it's
and the revisions are just tears,
yeah,
no love.
Exactly right. So, but yeah. So yeah, thank you for that announcement.
Yeah. What did you do your dissertation on? I know, but our viewers might not.
Well, it's like one of those things where it's really hard to explain, but I basically looked at neoliberalism and conservation policy. So I looked at austerity politics and the effects that that would have on the politics of conservation practice. So I basically looked at controversies around privatizing national park services and the ability for public and indigenous actors to actually participate in decision making. So yeah, if that made any sense.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Have you planned to make a video on it?
Not yet. I mean, part of it, I made a video on the treatment of First Nations in Canada, which touches on a bit of it on one of the chapters. But yeah, maybe I'll dive into it in a video coming up.
Well, congrats.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a number of new patrons to shout out this week. We have Omar, Helena, Kyle Coquillette, Serena Gallagher, and Leslie from Mad Blender. So thank you so much to everyone who has very generously donated to us this month or this past couple weeks. If you want to support the show, you can become a monthly patron. We have that up on our website at Vegan Vanguard, and you can also give us a one-time PayPal donation.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And special thank you to Mad Blender because I love her channel.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And yeah, she's super awesome. And I know that many people in the world are named Omar, but I'm wondering if it's the same Omar as the one who comments on my channel pretty often.
Last name is
I'm not sure I know this person's last name.
Never mind.
I just know that I always see the username Omar and they leave really nice comments. So
well, maybe it's the same one.
Especially touches my heart if it's this person.
So yeah, another way to support the show non-monetarily would be to share our episodes with friends or leave us a rating or a review on iTunes.
Do we have one yet?
No.
Oh man.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep on talking about this, you guys.
I
Every
know,
week
like,
we're gonna be like,
guys,
so do we have one yet?
I know, I keep
So
checking. But
yeah. I feel like
anyway,
it's yeah, it's at this point it's gonna be so exciting when we have one. It's a
I
lot of
know.
pressure for the listeners. They're like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's a lot of fucking expectations around this first
Yeah.
review.
We're gonna have to set up like a mighty Patreon reward for whoever is like the first person to leave us a review.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Mm.
so shall we dive in?
So, yeah, yes, we should because we have so many different topics to cover in kind of
Hmm.
no particular order. Mexie and I have been voice noting about this episode like all week, and just I feel like in general we talk about this so
Hmm.
much, but we, I guess, what motivated this week in particular was that Mexie got a very upsetting and annoying comment on her channel. And I don't know, we were getting so pissed ranting about it that we were like, fuck it, we're going to do an episode on it this week. So do you want to start off by
Yeah.
reading it?
Sure. Actually, this person deleted it. So it was actually a series of comments
Oh, joy.
which all have now been deleted. So it started on my Freedom for All video, and this person came on and basically said that, they really appreciated what I was saying and they loved my work and they agreed. However, it was off-putting that I was so I can't even remember. It was like you're too perfectly groomed and
Ugh.
like you're obsessed with like excessive grooming, and I was like, pardon? And it was like, why do you keep like looking at yourself in the viewfinder? And I'm like, because I'm trying to record myself. I'm trying to see like when I look into the camera, that's what I see, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just very off-putting. It was really just like, I don't like how groomed you are. And I was like, okay. And it actually kind of made me self conscious to the point that when I filmed my most recent video on radical food politics, I actually spent time thinking about, like, okay, what shirt should I put on that doesn't look like it's too
Well
professional, or
groomed.
what I mean? Like, yeah, what can I put on that looks a bit more casual? And I was like, okay, I guess I can try and do my makeup in a way that is less obvious, or like is less, because I had a lot of color in the last video, and so I was like, okay, maybe I can try and fix that. So I actually had thought that I did like tone it down and that I had addressed this concern of excessive grooming. But then I got this comment on my latest episode, or my latest video, and I quote, I really appreciate and thank you for sharing what you research, but if you believe in anything that you say, why the fuck do you care so much about how you and your fucking hair looks? Your opinion, quote unquote, which otherwise would be really powerful, is really diminished, in my opinion, by the obvious excessive concern you have with your not a hair out of place material image. You are
Oh my
gorgeous.
God.
Yeah. You are gorgeous. Age-wise, your skin and hair is probably flawless, and if not, who cares? It displays a truth that nothing is perfect, which is good and a normal thing.
Oh my God. It's like, who cares? Apparently you fucking care because you're policing my appearance.
Right. And I'm just like, you know what? Like, what age-wise, I'm sure your skin is perfect. I'm like, okay, now that I've finally gone to a dermatologist, my skin is getting a lot better. But like, no, I have had a lot of problems with it my entire life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sorry that I don't want to tell the story. Like, it tells a story. Like, yeah, the story of my eating disorder and my hormonal imbalance stemming from that for years and years and years, causing me a lot of stress and harm to my skin and face. Like, yeah, like, is this a,
Mm-hmm.
a story that I want to be telling to everybody while I'm just trying to educate them on political economy? Like, it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it goes on. There's like a whole other paragraph. So the image that you seem to want to portray, since you evidently look at it and at your videos, is feeding so wholeheartedly into the capitalist system that you claim to critique in your work. Because so many have been brainwashed by society over the years to think that they need to enhance their looks artificially and that this is their quote unquote choice, just goes to show how deep and ingrained this issue is. And don't the cosmetic and pharmaceutical industries, vegan or otherwise, love it? Come on, Mexie, please walk the
Oh
talk.
my fucking God. I literally want to murder this person.
Yeah, it's not even done. Your content is so fabulous in its own right, and I doubt that your audience is drawn to it by your staged hair, makeup, and thumbnail expression.
Oh
I
my
get
God,
that
thank
I'll.
you for giving me approval, Mr. Man.
Yeah,
I'm so thankful. I feel like he's doing this weird thing. We don't even know if this person's a man, but like he is. Um, he's doing this weird thing that dudes do where they are incredibly patronizing and criticize you, but then put in like a few comments in there, like they're sort of hitting on you or like they're sort of
hmm
complimenting you. And
hmm
I feel like they're trying to see, okay, well, if I get this person to be insecure enough and I get her to think that like she really needs to look up to me for like knowledge and validation, then like it's a really good flirting tactic.
Oh yeah, we've both experienced that.
We have, well, yes.
um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if this person is male or how they identify, but yeah, really, it's just, yeah. So they go on. I get that I'll probably be criticized for this comment, but since it's a feeling I get every time I listen to one of Mexie's otherwise awesome videos, I just want to put it and the idea of accessibility out there. And I feel like as like jumping off of what you were saying, it's like, yeah, the only reason that it would be okay for me to do this is that they think that I'm quote unquote gorgeous. Like if I
Right.
wasn't, then it would be like not okay to show your real self.
And that you're young and your skin isn't too wrinkly yet, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Your skin is probably fine and you look fine, so you should just not do this. And I'm just like, yeah, is this the reaction that you have when you watch every single female YouTuber, or is it
Mhm.
just certain ones? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Anyway, so this person deleted that comment. I was going to reply to it and they deleted it. And I was like, okay. But then they came back and posted another comment saying, capitalism, where people are convinced that they need to dye and straighten their hair and cover their faces in makeup. And I replied to that one
Wait,
being
what does that even mean?
like implying that like I'm just a
Like a
sucker.
okay.
Like, yeah, I'm just a slave to capitalism and like I'm dyeing my hair and putting on makeup because I'm like a tool of the system. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I replied to that one being like, your comments are incredibly ignorant. I have naturally straight hair. Yes, I dye it, and yes, I put on makeup in my videos. Like, please stop telling me how you want me to look while I'm delivering free content. This is how I'm comfortable presenting myself. Thank you very much. Like, I just really I
Yeah.
have so much to say
Damn
about
girl.
this. Damn girl, but
Mhm.
like, yeah, especially as a woman, coming into the YouTube sphere and being like when I started, I was like, one of the only women in the leftist sphere, really just the only like one of the only women talking about political economy specifically. So it was very male dominated. It was a very different place than I was used to, obviously in like academia and obviously in spaces that were quote unquote safe and that people would actually engage with you respectfully. Like even just being a woman on this platform, I get so much attention from the alt-right and neo-Nazis and everyone telling me to get back in the kitchen or that I don't deserve to vote or that I don't deserve to
Mhm.
live or that like I'm out of my lane and just
Mhm.
like I'm really sexually aggressive, like demeaning
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm like,
Mhm.
to build myself up in and like put myself out there and then like you're just as bad as them. Like you're just as bad as someone who would come on and say you're an ugly whore, you need to get in the kitchen, because at the end of the day you're still trying to police my appearance on this
Mhm.
platform. I'm like, I'm literally here to share information and you like the information that I'm sharing, so why are you spending all of this time investing all of this time and energy telling me how to look and like shaming me for not looking the way that you think I should look when I'm delivering this content?
Hmm. Yeah, it's like a lose-lose game. Similarly, I feel like I've gotten comments, so many comments that are like, "Well, it's too bad that like you're so fucking crazy, or you have these beliefs that are so wrong because you're otherwise pretty fuckable." And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, so that's the people who don't like your ideas, but then the people who do like your ideas, like this person might say like, it's a shame because your ideas are great, but like you're putting on too way too much makeup, or it's
Mm-hmm.
like, can we just leave our appearance out of this, please? Or
Mm-hmm.
at least
Mm-hmm.
can you just not put that in a comment and use it to like let a message seep through about my content?
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And I'm just like, for like male presenting YouTubers who get on there, like you don't really know if they've spent any time preparing, you know what I mean? It's like it's not as equally visible to the naked eye, but I'm sure people actually, don't go on there looking like they just got out of bed and, they obviously probably do something to prepare themselves to be on camera and be in front of the world, but it's just that much more obvious, I guess, with a woman because you can actually tell if she's washed her hair or brushed it or something. Whereas with men, it's like, okay, maybe they didn't do as much work, but yeah, it's just people
Yeah,
don't want to see that labor that you put in. But I'm just like, ironically, like I put in more time and energy trying to appear less made up in this last video because I was self-conscious about that first comment. And I'm like, why am I spending time, thinking so difficultly about how I need to look when I'm talking about this? Like, I just want to share this information.
and go on there looking how you feel most comfortable at the
Right.
end of the day.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to put yourself out there. So, of course, I
It
want to be
does, yeah.
comfortable with how I look. I don't want to look back at the video and be like, oh, geez, like this looks terrible, or you know what I mean? I want it to look good as a video.
Right.
Yeah. So,
And one of the reactions like I had when you told me about that comment, and I don't know, what we've been talking about is that women, this whole trope of like looking more natural, or men wanting women who supposedly don't put that much effort into how they look, is like that person and thinking that they could tell how obsessed with your looks you were by your makeup, which probably took you like 17, like 15 minutes right before the
mm-hmm,
video.
mm-hmm,
The whole idea that you can see how much effort someone puts into their appearance is like super flawed, because women are really encouraged to put so much effort into their body and how they look in ways that are otherwise not visible, right? So they
mm-hmm,
have to like fit a certain body size, which can sometimes be like a fucking lifetime project,
mm-hmm,
and thinking
mm-hmm,
about all the calories that you ingest, and there's so much advertising about how to make your skin soft, how to not have cellulite, like obviously
mm-hmm,
plastic surgery is a whole other industry, and also, yeah, being quote unquote natural is synonymous with being like very conventionally attractive,
mm-hmm,
and if you're not that perfect image of beauty, then you have to spend so much effort in trying to conform to it, but those efforts are never taken into consideration.
mm-hmm,
And obviously for like non-white women, it's also like all the labor that goes into making black hair look a certain way to ascribe
mm-hmm.
to white beauty standards. So just this whole idea that this person comes on and like scrutinizes your appearance and basically like shames you for being a hypocrite because you put on makeup, like what? So do you think that if I didn't put on makeup, like all of that other labor that we're constantly pressured to take on wouldn't exist?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna get into like eating disorders later, but yeah, this person obviously does not know at all like the struggles that I have been through in terms of eating disorders my entire life, like skin issues, body image issues. Like I was so thin for so long and it was so unhealthy for me. It was so unnatural and to the point where I developed chronic illness and like a hormonal imbalance. And so now I've, gained quite a lot of weight back. And it was very hard for me at first dealing with this new body, this new image, because I had spent so much of my life dealing with these terrible issues, like inside my own mind. And so it's taken a lot for me to actually be body positive in the body that I have right now. And so for me to actually get to this place and then kind of, go out online and then to still have people scrutinizing me and saying that, you know, forget all of that drama that you've been through your entire life. Like, just present your natural self. It's like you have no clue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, maybe, yeah, it is problematic that I have been raised in this environment and that I do have these issues. And yeah, it does have a lot to do with capitalism, but like, you're not like, you just telling me, like, forget about it is not gonna solve anything for me. You know what I mean? It's just going to make me feel even more self-conscious about, like, well, shit, yeah, I guess I still am caught in like my terrible, you know what I mean? Even though I'm like, I feel like I've progressed so much and gotten to this place where I do actually feel okay in my body, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right. And maybe at an earlier time when your mental health was actually a lot worse and a lot more tied to capitalism or the things that this person criticizes, but where you looked quote unquote more natural because maybe your
Mm-hmm.
skin was better at that time or something like that, or maybe, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you wore less makeup. Just the audacity to think, I don't even want to say the audacity, because I do think that our culture just like thinks like this. Like, I think this attitude is super prevalent, unfortunately, but that the person can just judge and like have an accurate depiction of how much effort you do and don't put into your appearance is just totally
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Mm-hmm. And like, they have no idea what I look like in my daily life. Like, I hardly wear makeup in my daily life. I mean, I work from home. I really don't put some effort in if I'm just going out to a store or something like that. But like, if I'm going out to see friends or something, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna wash my hair and brush it and maybe I'll put on some makeup. Like, I don't think that's the hugest deal. It's kind of like those
Mm-hmm.
people who like who they try and put down anti-capitalist by being like, oh, you're an anti-capitalist, but you still use things that were made by through capitalism. Like, oh, wrecked. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
right. You didn't
It's
think
like,
about that, did you?
yeah, exactly, right? Like, oh, you're talking about anti-capitalism, but you have makeup on your face. Oh, like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Like,
Right. It's like, oh, you're right. Scratch that. The system is
yeah,
great.
yeah, right. Like, never mind, forget my entire message. I don't know, it's just like
Hmm.
very upsetting.
Well, should we talk about, I don't know, the gendered politics of food a little bit?
I think we should.
And
I've been talking a lot about me, so maybe you can start with
I
like,
know, but I feel like I feel like this earlier part of the episode is really, I don't know, is like more relevant to your experience. Like, I'm happy to
all right.
jump in, but I
Yeah.
also think that what you have to share is really valuable.
Okay. So I
So
don't really
go, so fly away.
I don't really know where to start. I guess I'll start with the relationship with food that I had like in my family and my family's general relationship with food. So I come from like, an Italian background, and I don't know, my nana was kind of just the typical like, eat, like your skin and bones, like eat your food, and like cooking up all the stuff. And like, if you left food on the table, she'd be like, no, like you had to finish the food on your plate. Even if you were full, it was like, no, you finish it. It wasn't like, listen to your body
Hmm.
and let your body tell you if you were full. It was like, finish all the food, you know? So anyway, yeah, we ate kind of like trash growing up. Especially like my mom worked a lot, and it's not her fault. Like, my family just had no idea of like what was healthy food and what was not. Like, we ate McDonald's all the time. We had Pizza Hut like every day from school. Actually, they would send me to school with like a Coca-Cola and Lunchables. I don't know if people are old enough to know what Lunchables are, but they're just like these packaged meals that are just like fake. It was like fake little pizzas or fake little like crackers and shit. And then like Dunkaroos and Joe Louis and like fruit roll-ups. It was just like candy. And then I would come home and I would just eat candy and until dinner, which was like whatever. Like, we had like good food sometimes, but like just the amount of like shit that we ate on top of that was ridiculous. And my mom and my nana were overweight, and like so was I as a child. And they really like hated their bodies. Like they would always be super self-deprecating. Like my nana would like not go out to parties because she would be like, "Oh, I don't look good enough. Like I don't look good enough." My mom would be the same way. But anyway, so I feel like that kind of like translate or trickled down to me, because like my mom a lot of the time would look at me and be like, "Oh, like you're getting fat, like we need to put you on a diet, you know, we need to do this and that." And I was like, "Well, like you're feeding me." You know what I mean? I would get really offended because I was already a bit self-conscious because I was a little kid that was like a bit more overweight. And yeah, I mean, that's just like hard to be as a kid. So I was already like, so then she would say this kind of stuff, and I would just be so mad. I'd be like, you need to go on a diet. Like, I would just like,
Mm-hmm.
flip out. So I already had like pretty bad, like, body image or feeling of food. I just want to give like a little disclaimer that like I'm not saying that, eating junk food is horrible or that it's necessarily going to make you overweight or that it's necessarily going to mean that you have a disordered eating with food. Or it's the same thing that, if someone appears to be overweight, you can't like there's no way of knowing that they actually just sit around eating junk food all the time. So I'm not saying that. Like me now, like it's definitely hormonal. Like my whole body, it doesn't really matter what I eat. You know what I mean? Like I could eat whatever. I could eat nothing and my body will react in a certain way. So you really just can't tell like from looking at a person like what they're eating.
Totally.
Um, but anyway, so even despite all of that, I still felt pretty confident because I feel like this was before the days of like the internet, even, or like it was like the early days, like when I was, in my early teens and
The early
stuff.
days.
Yeah, the early days where like things just weren't so like not everybody was online and everybody was connected. Like you had cell phones, but you would just like text each other. You didn't have like smartphones or anything. Um, and I still felt like rather confident in myself. I don't know. I just had this like kind of complicated relationship with myself and with food. Like I didn't understand why I was bigger than other people, because I saw them eating similar things, but they were thin and I was not. Um, and obviously I just felt really bad. Like my mom would like put us on these diets all the time. Like she'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna do Atkins," and then that would last like a couple weeks and we'd like just die or fall off of it, and then be like, "Okay, now we're gonna do this new one," right? So it was just like this yo-yo dieting and me just feeling all the time like I wasn't getting anywhere and just like really like upset. So then I left home, went to university, and I started to well, I learned a lot. Like I was in environmental studies and anthropology, and I actually started to learn about the global meat industry and how fucking unsustainable and disgusting it was, and just how like it was the most pressing problem. Like we had to stop eating meat. So I was like, okay. I went vegetarian. And I feel like that was the first time that I was, outside of the house. I started to live with other girls who had very different relationships with food, than I had had growing up. And I just kind of fell into this thing where I used my vegetarianism as a way to like legitimize what was like growing extreme orthorexia. Like I would just be like, "Oh, it would just give me an excuse to not eat all of this like junk food that I would normally eat because I was like, "Oh, I can't. I'm vegetarian." Like, "Oh, I can't eat it." So I would just eat like literally vegetables. I was so unhealthy though. I ate like vegetables and cheese. I would not eat carbs. I thought carbs made you fat. So I I would like
Mm-hmm.
sooner die than eat a carb. I did not eat like desserts. I was just, yeah, it was just extremely problematic. And I was working out like a fiend. Like I've always been very, very athletic. Even when I was a kid, I was super athletic and I was really good at sports. I was really good at soccer and everything. And so I just kind of maintained that. But because I was just kind of stopped eating, it was really problematic. And then I really upped my workout game once I saw that I was getting results. And then it just really fed into this like cycle, like this snowball cycle of me just, yeah, eating as little as possible and really like, yeah, not eat, like eating just literally vegetables. Um, and
Wow.
working out so much. So I was, oh my gosh, I was real thin. It was ridiculous. Um, and it was such a strain on my body, but I didn't really realize, and I was just so happy. Well, I wasn't happy. I was obviously like extremely tortured
Miserable.
and yeah,
Right.
extremely depressed and had a lot of problems. But I was just so like the one thing that I was like, wow, like look at me, like I finally did it, like I finally figured it out. And I would like talk to my family as if like I knew, like I was the expert on nutrition. Um, I mean, and the sad thing was that I was pretty much following like a sports nutrition kind of a thing. Like so many like sports gurus will tell you like if you want to
Mm-hmm.
cut, like
Yep.
eat protein, eat vegetables, and that's
Yep.
it. And so that's what I was doing. I was just
Yep.
eating vegetarian protein, vegetables, and that's it. And so I was like,
I
oh,
was
I've
gonna say it sounds extreme, like when you're describing it now with like
mhm,
hindsight and like yeah, critical hindsight on your situation. But like this sounds like so many like diet plans or like
mhm,
open any fitness magazine today and like I don't know, they're
mhm.
encouraging this type of behavior. It's like
Yeah.
so fucking normal.
I know it really wasn't just me sitting there like coming up with this by myself. I
Yeah.
would go online and look at like because I was doing weightlifting, I was doing like extreme cardio, like biking 100K. I was doing like all of this super fit stuff. So I would go online and look like, okay, what's the best bodybuilding diet or like what's the best way to like cut and like whatever. Of course, I was always skipping the bulk part of that and I was just doing like a constant cut.
Hmm.
Um, but still, that's like what I was seeing. So I was like, okay. And so yeah, I mean, I would talk to my family as in like, you know, because everyone was just like, wow, you're so disciplined. You're so, oh, I wish I had your discipline. I wish it, you know what I mean? And I wish I like could do what you do. And I was like, well, it's like easy, like, and I just kind of talked as if I knew what the fuck was going on. Meanwhile, it was like putting such a strain on my body because when you work out, and yeah, also like obviously I was eating no carbs, so I needed stimulants to keep me going constantly. So I drank coffee all day. Like I did not drink water. I drank coffee continually.
Mm.
Um and
Like even later in the day.
oh yeah. Like I could drink coffee
Mm.
like after dinner and then like go to bed. You know what I mean? I just drank it like all day. Um
Which
and
is so funny because you're so sensitive to it now.
well, that's why. Like, I really fucked myself up. So,
Mm.
this is a cautionary tale to everyone to not do what I did at all. So, I mean, first of all, when you drink that much coffee, it messes up your cortisol levels. Cortisol is your stress hormone. So it heightens your stress hormone, and when you put that too much out of balance all the time, it starts to tax your adrenals. Another thing that heightens your stress hormone is when you're like doing a lot of physical activity. Like if you're working out a lot, that is a stress on your body, so it also increases your stress hormone, and it taxes your adrenals. So your adrenals are outpouring the stress hormone all the time, um, and kind of keeping your body on fight or flight mode, and they're just becoming exhausted. And then you get to a point where your cortisol, like it's supposed to be that when you wake up, your cortisol is high so that it kind of like lets you wake up and gets you ready for the day, and so that you're ready and you're kind of fight or flight mode in the morning to like get going. And then it's supposed to drop down at night so that you feel calm and whatever and you can go to bed. But when you keep stressing your body too much and tax your adrenals out, then what happens is that flips and you have this surge of adrenaline at night when you're trying to go to bed. So you're exhausted, but it's like you're tired but wired and you can't sleep. And then not
Mm.
sleeping is another thing that raises your cortisol, which like messes it up even more. And then when you wake up in the morning, it's low, so you feel really sluggish, you can't get out of bed, etc. So eventually that started happening to me, and this took years. Like I'm talking like did this to myself over a period of like 10 years. So that started happening to me. I was losing sleep. I started developing like insomnia, which just made things even worse. And then it made me rely on coffee even more during the day, and just like everything was just so stressful in my body. And then eventually that led to hypothyroidism, which just like threw my body into a whole meltdown. And that is basically like your thyroid controls so much in your body, and your metabolism and everything. So I was gaining weight and I didn't understand why I was gaining weight. And so I would just like eat less and work out more, which obviously just made things even worse. So anyway, eventually I figured out like what the hell was going on. That's actually when I decided to go vegan. It was a couple years ago. Um, because I had seen like Freely the Banana Girl say that she had cured her thyroid problem with her high carb, low fat diet. So I was like, oh, great.
Did she say that?
Yeah.
Did she say specifically what has that girl not cured with a vegan diet? That's what I
Yeah.
want to know.
She said she cured her low thyroid function with the high carb, low fat vegan diet. I mean, I have to say that it really actually did help, because I did that for a long time, and then my thyroid function was restored. So my thyroid is fine now, but I'm still like, even years after that, I was suffering with adrenal fatigue and issues with my endocrine system. So I'm still dealing with that like imbalance and like, so still dealing with that. I'm getting so much better now. Like I'm finally feeling like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm pretty much almost better, I would say. Which is amazing, but it honestly took so long, and there was a long time where I just felt like nothing is ever going to get better, and I just totally fucked my whole body, and like I'm done. Like I'm never going to be able to do anything again. I'm never going to be able to, yeah. It was just awful. But yeah, I mean, I would love to say that like I was just immediately cured of that body image issue when I decided to go vegan and like focus on my health, because the high carb thing, it was like you eat a ton of calories. And so for me, that was like crazy, because I had always like I had gotten to the point where I knew the calories that were in every single food. You didn't even like, it wasn't even like an effort to me. I could just look at a meal and be like, I know exactly how many calories are in there. So I went from that to just being like, okay, I can eat like 3,000 calories of like high carb vegan food. And so, but I was like, part of my impetus for doing that was that it was like, that whole diet was advertised as like, oh, well, you'll also get super skinny. So it was like, okay, great. I'll eat as much as I want. I'll cure my thyroid, but I'll also be really thin. Like it really mattered to me that I didn't like gain a bunch of weight still, because I was still gaining it with the thyroid problem. So yeah, like only now do I actually feel like I've accepted my body and that I'm like totally out of that mindset. And it's just like a huge sigh of relief. But like, yeah, how many fucking years did I spend in my life like destroying myself and like leading to these problems that I've had now? I mean, I took a year longer than I needed to take to finish my PhD. Like I basically just wasted a year of my life being sick because I spent so long mistreating myself and like not accepting my body for what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that whole story with everyone that's
Yeah.
listening. I'm sure that wasn't super easy.
Right. So kids listening, don't do that.
So I have a question. When you were in that mindset of being, of obsessively working out and being really careful with your diet, etc., I don't know exactly how to word this, but I know we've talked a lot about the trope of like the natural girl and trying to be cool and trying to be similar to dudes and not giving a fuck about anything. And anyway, we're going to get into that later in the episode. But how did this like obsessive mindset affect that, and how did you portray it to people? Did you try to mask it, or did you try to, I don't know, take on a new trope of the girl who was like super athletic and like naturally didn't want to eat cheeseburgers? Or
yeah, that was exactly it. The thing is that like I have a very like obsessive personality in general, so like if I decide to do something, then I just do it. And so everyone was just like, oh, like I wish I had your discipline. And I was like, really, like what it came down to was that I just like hated how I looked before so badly that I was like, oh, this works, I'm gonna do it. Like it wasn't even a consideration for me to want to go back. It was like, oh, this is working, I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? So I very much did portray it as like, oh, I'm just like super healthy and I'm just like I'm super athletic. And the thing is like I
Mm-hmm.
was super athletic, but I just wasn't feeding my
Mm-hmm.
body. So people didn't really know that. They were just kind of like, wow, like, yeah, look at their results. Like that's, that's nuts. Like I don't know. Yeah. So I really did portray it as in like, this is just my new lifestyle, and I'm just like a super athlete, and this is how super athletes
Mm-hmm.
look, and this is what super athletes eat. Like, we don't fuck around. You know what I mean? Like, we don't, eat
Mm-hmm.
junk or like ice cream or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
but it was like like it was a thinly veiled veneer. I mean, like I would go out to I remember I went to this wedding. I was always like really concerned about what the vegetarian meal was because usually people like at that time there wasn't a lot of like chefs that really knew what to make for vegetarian, so they would just make pasta, and of course carbs for me was a big no-no. So
Mm-hmm.
they would like bring me out this pasta and I would be like, no, I don't want this. Like, please just bring me like vegetables and like, or the salad or like the sides that are going with the other thing. And then like in my purse, I would have brought like tofu or something to go with it. Like, I'm so serious. I would bring
Mm-hmm.
my own food to be like, okay, I'm eating this. And then I could see people around me being
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, like, are you serious? And I was just like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? And then of course dessert would come and I would
Mm-hmm.
be like, "Oh, I don't want it." But like my partner would always eat double dessert because he knew I wouldn't eat the dessert. So that was like a save for me because otherwise I would just be sitting there awkwardly being like, "I don't want it," or like, you know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to talk at all about like the idea of different bodies being perceived differently when they eat certain things,
Mm-hmm.
because like that was something that I know that you experienced a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I made a video sort of recently about this called My Gendered Relationship with Food, like before going vegan.
Mhm.
But as a person who, the reason that I asked that question a couple minutes ago about like how you maintain the appearance of being like natural and cool, even though you had this very obsessive like attitude with food, was because so much of my life was spent trying to be like cool and trying to be natural. Um, and especially as a teenager, I think I really built up my identity around that, being just being like just super friendly with everyone and being very close to all the men in my life and holding them to much lower standards than I would hold any women.
Mhm.
Like really, really, really stark difference there. Like, so I've always been super thin,
Mhm.
like, um, and I hit puberty really late. Like, I was just, I was like that girl who was like 16 and who just had the body of a little girl or
Mhm.
whatever, and was like super, super thin. And during puberty, my body definitely changed. And especially I went on the pill,
Mm.
which really like, yeah, changed the way that my body looked and actually like really fucked me up in a lot of ways. Like
Me
I just
too.
had so much water retention and I got really bad. I would just get incredibly like swollen. Like I would get really swollen breasts and chest and stretch marks everywhere. Whenever that time of the month came about, like it was just like very intense. And so during that period, I would say that I was at a more like quote unquote normal weight, whatever the fuck that means.
Mm.
But that when I went off the pill, I was like 22 or something. I just went right back to my like weight before the pill, or I lost a lot of weight. And
Mhm.
I was also just under like a lot of stress in college and whatever. I was like super thin and I still am super thin. I think people who don't know me and who haven't eaten with me and who don't know my relationship with food like wonder. if I have an eating disorder, and I'm really okay with it now. I mean, as okay as you can be, meaning that I'm very confident in my way of eating and caring for my body, so it doesn't get to me as much. But for a really long time, it like almost I don't know, traumatizing is a bit too intense of a word maybe, but it was like I would spend so much time thinking about like how I was being perceived by other people and making sure that like I did everything in my power to make them know that I didn't have an eating disorder. Like I just always had to like eat hamburgers in public and like drink beer and like do all this stuff that I didn't even want to do or didn't privately do. But I was super nervous about having an eating disorder, and I think that that was directly tied to how badly I wanted to be like a cool girl, and how much that image of the overly controlling like food freak didn't fit that image. I do think that women are scrutinized in a particular way due to the diet culture that we live in. It always strikes me as very interesting that on the one hand, diet culture is so pervasive. All we talk about is how to eat less calories and lose less weight. But then on the other hand, weight loss is still veiled in this rhetoric that makes you think that it's a secret. You know, it's always like 3 secrets to like lose weight. And I think that's something that capitalism hugely benefits from, because they still can sell you the idea that you can be a size 0 if you're naturally a size 6 or a size 8 or size 10, when we know actually like your quote unquote potential to lose weight according to your body type is already like super biologically determined. But then I also think that that reaffirms this sort of pathologically secretive relationship we're supposed to have with our food. And people like trying to find out what a certain person eats to look the way that they do. So I feel like that also contributed to my awareness that people were very aware of what I ate. And I think that with men, the rhetoric around weight loss is really different, and it really centers around like strength and protein. And like I completely think that the obsessive like working out wellness culture with men is also very oppressive and very problematic and leads to a lot of body shaming. But I'm not sure that there is the same sort of like secretive mystique about their diets. And I've also like I've really noticed with the men around me, the men in my life, like even men that I've dated or men that are close to me, like sometimes they talk about food, like they obviously have a problem with food. They go through these very intensive workout binges where they're hitting the gym like once or twice a day. They're eating super low calorie. They're obsessed with their macronutrients. And then they'll also have these binges that go the other way where, you know, they have cheat days and they eat way too much according to them. And they talk about calories obsessively. And sometimes I look at that and I'm like, I can never imagine myself talking about food that way, and I cannot imagine like the level of alarm that I would set off around me if I ever spoke about food that way. So what the person says about the relationship with food is going to be interpreted by society so differently based on the gender that they are and the size that they are as well. Because obviously if you're bigger and you're talking about restricting your food, you know, people think it's totally normal for you to be on a diet, and they think that larger people can't have eating disorders.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, that like these body image issues and eating disorders or whatever are, you know, not just for women. I definitely know men who have similar to what you're just describing, disordered relationships with food, either binging and then going the opposite direction and working out and counting calories and being very obsessed with, you know, making sure that every single meal is, you know, encompasses the perfect macronutrients and the exact right, like weighing out their food, etc. But it's true that people would not scrutinize that man the same way that they would scrutinize a woman doing the exact same thing. A woman doing the same thing, it would be like, okay, you have a problem, you know. And the men doing it are like, oh, you must just really, care about athleticism and yeah, just
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
So,
I also think it's very difficult to have a healthy relationship with food, like in the society that we live in. And also feel like you have ownership over your relationship with food and your relationship with your body. Because at least for me, I think I was so concerned that other people thought I had an eating disorder. And also, I would just constantly get remarks on it. I feel like yeah, if you're telling someone they're like too thin, or if you're like quote unquote complimenting how tiny they are, there's just like no fucking limits. It was just I mean, it still is like all the time,
mhm,
constantly,
mhm,
people
mhm,
like feeling like they have the right to make remarks on my body because they're telling me something that society thinks is a good thing, or because like they're so obsessed with their weight that they think it's always a compliment if you tell someone they're too thin, or if
mhm,
they're perfect or whatever.
mhm.
um
Yeah, like, "Oh, have you
and
lost weight?"
yeah, exactly. And like one little comment like that, especially at the height of just growing up and how worried I was that other people thought I had a problem with food. Yeah, one little comment like that can like throw off your whole day, you know? I just don't think that people should comment on other people's bodies, like
Mhm,
literally ever,
mhm,
unless I don't even know if there's an unless. Like, yeah, unless like actual opinions are solicited or whatever. It's just not okay ever to comment on someone's body. I really feel super strongly about that now.
mhm,
Um, but but I think that society politicizes women's relationship with food so much that it becomes hard as a woman to feel like you have ownership over the relationship you have with food. Like I know that for me, I was always like, well, do I like I like working out and I like going for runs, and I was like, well, is it healthy for me to go for a run? Like, do I really want to go for a run? Like,
mhm,
do I have a problem? Do I have, the words we use to articulate to ourselves what is healthy, what is normal, what is too much, what is too little, have already been so thoroughly defined by our culture that is obsessed with food and weight.
mhm.
I've thought about that a lot,
Yeah.
how to relate to the food we eat to nourish ourselves, which is, at least in our individualistic way of life, perhaps the most repetitive, personal, intimate choice we make,
Mhm,
using words that are already so saturated by the societal conversations, by like societal conversations that are exterior to you.
mhm, mhm.
I almost feel like because of this, we're robbed of a certain autonomy when it comes to our body image. And I like obviously don't know how to fix this. Maybe inventing a whole new vocabulary, but I don't really know how feasible that is. But yeah, did that make any sense?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I think there's definitely an issue, like in kind of like a Foucauldian sense. I feel like none of our choices or desires or whatever are
Right.
completely separate from the world around us, or like the way that we've been socialized, etc., or like the social norms that we like internalize day by day. So yeah, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
these things are like deep seated that you don't even realize. I mean, it took me how many years to realize that this was a problem, and that actually, yeah, I should be not treating my body or myself this way. Like it takes a lot, you know? But I still love
Mm-hmm.
working out, you know what I mean? Like I'm still athletic even though like my body's
Yeah, me
changed and
too.
whatever. So yeah, it's not a bad thing, but it's just when it starts to like take over your whole mind and your whole life. And yeah.
Yeah. And what I talked about specifically on my channel was how difficult, like imagine everything that I've just described to you, like about my just heightened awareness that people were extremely aware of like what I was eating all the time and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Under that climate, learning about veganism and deciding
Mm.
that for ethical reasons I wanted to be vegan.
Hmm.
um and I was just like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to like come out to people as vegan? Like it was like
Mm.
my worst nightmare.
Hmm.
But for very like personal reasons, not because I didn't feel super passionate about the plight of animals, but that I was thinking like this is just going to be perceived as a cover up by other people.
Hmm.
And also it's just not very cool of a cool girl to not eat like ribs and hamburgers all the time to all of a sudden be like the downer who like can only eat vegan food. So I actually feel like veganism, since like my ethical stance on it was strong enough to make me want to go vegan, and I felt like I was like on this train that I couldn't get off anymore, you know, like like you can't unsee what you've already seen or know what you've I was just like, fuck it, like I there's no way I'm going to keep on eating animal products. I feel like it forced me to confront a lot of these insecurities because I kind of had to take on the label that like had been my worst nightmare almost for so many years, being perceived as this person who does have this like incredibly restrictive diet. And so I feel like it empowered me after, you know, definitely like scaring me for a couple of months to really take ownership over like even a lot more of my beliefs, and really have to not care what other people thought as much as possible. And I feel like I had already done that with a lot of things about like feminism and like anti-racism at that point. But I think something as personal as like veganism and your own diet and having to publicly defend it all the time actually like really liberated me, I think, from a lot of the more insidious cross I was bearing by myself, you know?
I was going to say, so do you feel as though you're on the other side of it now in terms of like, you know, you've made it?
With food?
With food and like the cool girl trope and like just kind of being okay with who you are.
Yeah. With food, definitely, I think. Also because I feel so passionately about veganism, that's another thing. Like I eat for myself for sure for fuel, but I also eat for, or you know, my diet has such a political implication now that, and I believe so strongly in it, and feel like I'm defending such a larger thing that actually helped me feel less and this connects to what I was saying before, having something like so private as your relationship with food be influenced by things that are like so public and pervasive. The fact that there's a political public element to something in my diet and what I'm choosing to eat is also something that's liberating in a sense. And yeah, no, so I think that with my relationship with food, like pretty much fully, also because I'm just so unapologetic about like being vegan, and I just love eating the idea of like eating plants and stuff. Like I do think that has something to do with it. I think I was never fully comfortable with eating meat maybe, or anyway, so for the cool girl trope, like for sure I think that I've come a long way. I've notably analyzed and deconstructed a lot of my relationships with the men that are close to me in my life. And I realize in hindsight that I really tried to emulate a certain image of a successful woman in their eyes to just construct, honestly, like my entire self as a teenager. I mean, I was always super opinionated, but I would always be like opinionated, but still laugh at like crude sexist jokes, or like I was still critical of other women if they were, and if that made me cooler in their eyes and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, obviously, since I have like views just on most things that are at such odds with a lot of like society, I think that by default it kind of makes me like an uncool girl, quote unquote. I think that in dating I still struggle with it. When I date men, I think that it comes through a lot more. And I don't find myself acting that way at all when I date women. But I think like with men, I'm constantly trying to show that I'm like not too attached, that I'm super independent, that, you know, all these things that like, yes, I am, but I've internalized so much the kind of the trope of like the nagging wife or the nagging girlfriend that doesn't let like a dude just like lie around with his buddies and like eat chicken wings and like watch the soccer game, and like, oh, why doesn't she just stop being such a bitch, and like, oh my god, like she's trying to like put a ring on it, and I just want to like fuck around a little more, like whatever. I really think that I was so conditioned by that, and I really try to unlearn it, but I have a very hard time being I have a very hard time like voicing criticism that are legitimate, but I'm just so scared of being seen as like a whiner, I think, with the men that I date. That I don't know. I mean, I still am super, super transparent about my beliefs, like my political beliefs, about everything I think about, like veganism and sexism and capitalism, etc. But I think that like with them, I'm just so scared of being critical of anything that they do or of being like portrayed as like a downer. So that is definitely something that I've really tried to work on, but I know that it's something that I've talked with you about a lot and that like you've heard me struggle with sometimes where I'm just like, I just want him to know that I'm not looking for commitment because like a lot of times I'm fucking not. And like why I've been told by men before, like, I just assumed that you wanted commitment or like you want too much commitment or something like that. And I'm like, why like women are just assumed to want that all the time? And why do I feel so embarrassed if I did want that? And that's obviously because there's this whole larger implication of how annoying those kinds of women are in society. But yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question, but I do think things are a lot better.
That's good.
And also, I mean, I think a big step has been being on OkCupid and being on certain dating apps and being like incredibly forward about my political stances right off the bat. Like my OkCupid profile is literally the most fucking polarizing thing ever. Like I pretty much constructed it or just like wrote it out being like very unapologetic. And with the aim that if the person took the time to read it and they still messaged me by the end of the profile, they had to be fucking dope because it was quite a ride, So
yeah, I'm not on those things, but I feel like if and when I do it, mine would be the same way. It'd be like, message me only if you are a anti-capitalist, feminist, vegan. Like
right. And also like if you're not a dude who's gonna fucking mansplain me and interrupt me and I feel like that has to be very, very forward as well. Yeah. So yeah, I've probably alienated a lot of my potential suitors.
Yeah. Oh well. They're not worth it if they're not,
They weren't worth it anyway.
Yeah, so
But Mexie and I will link a lot of articles about like the cool girl trope in the description bar. What am I talking about? This is not YouTube. In the show notes. Because I know that like learning about the trope of like the manic pixie dream girl and the cool girl and this whole myth about like natural effortless beauty like really did help me or just like articulated a lot of the pressures that I had been feeling. And we were also like reading a bunch of them before recording this episode. We were like, we don't really know what this is how the episode's gonna go, but we have a lot to say about all of this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I didn't really know what the cool girl trope was until you explained it to me, and then I kind of felt like, yeah, I've never really been that girl because like for better or for worse, I guess maybe because I grew up in such a like Italian, like in your face kind of a household where it was just like if you had thoughts or feelings, then like you expressed them and like you expressed them in like the most theatrical like it really wasn't, it was like tears, yelling, like, you know what I mean? Like you expressed it, right? So yeah, I've never been that girl that's like aloof or like, oh, I don't want commitment. It's like, no, if you're dating me, you're dating me. Like I've never been in a situation where it's like, oh, are we exclusive? I wonder if I should ask if we're gonna be like, no, like if you're dating me, then we're exclusive. You know what I mean? I've just always really been like super intense, like capital R romantic. And it's like, but I hardly ever like anyone. That's the thing. It's like I've only had like a few like really intense relationships because I'm like, I don't know, I find it really rare to find that connection. But then like when I do, I'm like, all right, if you're going to be like monopolizing my time, then like you're going to adore it or like, no, then you're not, you know what I mean? But like reading more about the trope, I did find that like I did fall into the cool girl trope like when I was in high school. Like because I it was kind of like I was raised by like really powerful women, but they also like my nana hated feminism. Like she was like, you better not turn into one of those like feminist chicks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like she was super powerful. Like she like didn't even have an education, but she started like three businesses and like, you know, she was just amazing. But she, I guess, still fell into that idea that like, you know, women don't need a leg up. Like we just need to do it for ourselves, and like really ignoring like the structural oppression and like capitalism and patriarchy that would like impede women's ability to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really fell into that when I was like a teenager, and I was like the cool girl. Like I hated being a girl when I was growing up. I really always wanted to be a guy, not because I had gender dysphoria, but because I didn't like how
Yeah,
women.
because they got to like do more shit.
Yeah, I was just like, because all like when I was younger, I was super athletic. I wanted to play in the NHL, and they were like, "Oh, you can't do that. You're a woman." And I was like, "Fuck that!" And then like,
Mm-hmm.
I was just so mad at like how women were treated, how I was treated as like an idiot growing up. I just yeah, I just really hated being a girl. So I really fell into that like cool girl trope of like being one of the guys and like making fun of
Mm-hmm.
feminism and like yeah, laughing at sexist jokes and everything that like so many young women, like you're seeing them all over the internet now, just like are the same, like in service of the patriarchy, like putting down feminism, you know, seeing themselves as in competition with other women. Like I definitely fell into that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like it's political as well as like just something that happens in your relationships, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and when you were talking about like being raised by strong women, I definitely, I mean, my mom was like super, super opinionated and super strong. And I mean, the women in my family were way more like the women, well, it was me and my mom, but we were way more emotional than the men. Like, and that is something that I tried to distance myself of as a teenager because it was portrayed as like hysteria,
mhm.
and just being overly nagging.
Mhm.
Whereas like the men were just like much more like emotional and rational. And I've always been like super intense, like super emotional. I had like as a kid, I mean, I was super anxious until the age of like 11, and then I got better, but I cried a lot, I screamed a lot, I had temper issues. I
Mhm.
would cry whenever I learned about like a terrible thing that was going on in the world. I had this horrible fear of not falling asleep.
Mhm.
Um I mean, I was just a really like just tormented little kid.
Mhm.
Um and I was always very like opinionated and loud about it, and I but always kind of told that that was, or always knew that that was seen as like very irrational and discrediting.
Mhm.
And I think as a teenager, when I tried to become, when I tried to fit more the image of like what would be attractive, what would be considered attractive and successful, I was still opinionated, but I was always very careful that it was worded in a way that wasn't threatening to men and that wouldn't come off as like quote unquote hysterical
Mhm.
or bitchy.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking like we'll probably do a whole other podcast on this, but just the idea that women like because they're seen as like emotional or hysterical or like as weaker, like they're not taken seriously when they actually have problems like health problems, etc. I was
mhm,
thinking of like your family not taking you seriously when you had some serious health problems, and then
mhm.
me not being taken seriously with my chronic health issues because it's just like, oh well, like, you know, there's always something wrong with you, like you're always emotional
Yeah.
over something,
Mhm.
so like
Yes.
what's
Ugh.
this now, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, but this is serious. And like you're just discounting my entire experience because it's like, oh, well, there's always something wrong. It's like, well, maybe there is,
Right.
you know? Maybe it's
Right.
chronic
It's like
illness.
men have to be like the rational like arbiter of your pain
Right.
and see if it's really worth something, like worth taking this thing seriously or not.
Yeah. Or they're just like fatigued, like, oh, well, this is the same problem that's been happening, so I don't care anymore. Right.
Like
It's like, yeah, it is chronic illness though. So
right.
anyway.
Yeah. take my fucking word for it.
Yeah. And like give a shit, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, capitalism and patriarchy are so intertwined. And like these ideas of rationality and like showing no emotion, etc., are also in service of capital in terms of like, you know, rational, committed, disciplined workers produce good work. You know what I mean? Like people who are
Mm-hmm.
erratic and emotional and just indulging in these things, or it's like you're not productive. You know what I
Like
mean?
you want to be a robot.
Right. Or like the people who are rewarded with, you know, positions of power are usually the most rational men, and women in the workplace are seen as like a liability because, oh, they could start crying at any moment. And like, you know what I
As we
mean?
do, you know?
Yeah. So, and that's just seen as like, and if a woman does get emotional in the workplace, it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Back up now. Like, that is not okay. And it's just like,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but sometimes men are so emotional and like
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote irrational, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's almost like, oh, he's like, oh, he cried, he's sensitive, this is
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Or
But
they're
like,
just like expressing it through rage and anger, and it just like comes
mm-hmm,
out in these terrible ways. And then it's like, oh, well, they're not being emotional. They're just like real mad. They're just taking control of the situation. They're just
uh-huh.
like being
They just don't take
assertive.
shit from anybody.
Yeah, they're just being assertive and like, you know, telling people what's what, when really it's just like this is coming from a place of, you know, deep emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and capitalism benefits so much off of like, I mean, literally the natural beauty trope is probably the number one dominant trope in like the multi-billion dollar
mm-hmm.
beauty industry. It's
Mm-hmm.
like making us believe that there is such thing as natural beauty while selling us these incredibly expensive, time-consuming products, which is literally contrary to the
Mm-hmm.
whole idea that natural beauty exists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the
Absolutely.
fact that they've gotten us to somehow just stop seeing that contradiction and that natural beauty is used again and again and again and again to sell us
Mm-hmm.
literally everything
Yeah. You know
is
what?
wild.
On Instagram now they show you ads, right?
Yeah.
So they're sending me all these like things for like clothes and beauty and whatever, because I guess I'm a woman. So I've seen these ads now. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're called like facial cups, and it's called cupping your face. And they say that Kim Kardashian and Gwyneth Paltrow are like really big into facial cupping. It's basically this like
What?
suction cup that you suck onto your face and then like drag it around, and it's supposed to like plump up and like kind of like firm up and like suck your face up into like, and you can do it, even do it on your lips, so it kind of like sucks out your lips, so it's like a natural plump. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's like people are like sucking their face with these cups to like make it look just naturally firm and plump and
Oh my
wonderful.
God.
And then
Yeah.
I saw another one that was even more intense than that. It was this like spinning gadget. It looked like, I don't know, you know those like Quidditch
Sometimes they
balls
look
in
like
like
torture devices.
yeah. You know those like in like Harry Potter, the like Quidditch thing that like spins around?
Yeah.
It looked like that, and you like spun it on your face again for the exact same purpose as like the facial cups. So I'm like, this
Mm.
person who sent me this comment, I'm like, you have no idea what people go through
Yeah.
to
No
look
idea.
naturally beautiful, and how that is also in service of capitalism. Like pretty much everything
Mm-hmm.
in this capitalist system is in service of capitalism. You know, even if
Mm-hmm.
you try and do something that's against the grain, it's going to be commodified if it has not been already. So like,
Mm-hmm.
bitch, just
Absolutely.
let me deliver my
Just let
content.
me fucking wear makeup in my video and
Yeah,
please go consume someone else's free content.
right. Yeah, and I'm
And
like, and now you know my life history of like body image, so please don't come at me talking about my fucking body or my appearance anymore.
right.
You know?
Yeah. I
Mm,
really want to I really want to talk to you more and perhaps we should do this on air but about like aging
mm, mm,
'cause I just feel like just how horrible and skewed the portrayal of aging is in our society. It has
mm-hmm,
really messed with my brain.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, mine too.
And like my
Especially,
relationship with aging, like
mm-hmm,
my friend and I talk a lot about this, like the fact that I'm 26 and I'm getting a few lines on my face, and like I hate how much I stare at them and
Mm-hmm.
worry about them, and
Mm-hmm.
it just God,
Yeah.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and I'm even older than that. I started noticing that when I was like 28, I was like, I have lines everywhere, and like especially being
Yeah.
on like YouTube and Twitter, and like it's such a like young demographic that's on
Mhm.
there. It's like it's pretty much dominated by people in like their early 20s or like
Mhm.
teens, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I would definitely be down to talk more about that.
Totally. I've sort of been dealing with it by telling myself like, "Hey, Maureen, this is 100%. This can only get worse."
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like this is like some you need to learn how to you need to learn to find these lines on your face and like just your aging
Mhm.
body, whatever, like
Mhm.
beautiful, because it's only going to keep aging. Like this literally is a clock that like cannot be stopped, and it's
Mhm.
amazing and should be celebrated, because I'm also just like growing into so many different things, and like there's so
Mhm.
many positive fucking things about aging. Like I love aging.
Mhm.
Um that I need to be okay, and more than okay, I need to be celebrating any
Mhm.
sign of aging that I get on my body, because otherwise, like, we're gonna be miserable for our entire lives, you know?
Yeah, I've been kind of doing the same. Like I feel like I'm actually finally like, like fine with the age that I am because I'm just like, yeah, it's totally great. And like I have experience now, like I'm a doctor.
Hmm. Yeah, you
That's
are.
gotta count for something. You can't do that when you're like in your early 20s. But yeah, so I laugh a lot, and I've pretty much noticed that like the lines that I do have on my face that have like come out in the past couple years are like laugh lines. Like it's the lines
Hmm.
that come out when I am laughing. And then I don't know, I've seen a lot of like beautiful pictures, or like I think there was like this like photo project where they just showed like I guess older women smiling, but like they had like the most intense laugh lines, and it was just so cool. And I was
Mm,
like, yeah, I laugh a lot. These are my laugh lines.
yeah. And that's the thing I love. I never look at like scrutinized lines on other women's faces or
Mhm.
other men's faces. Like I literally have never in my life thought like, ooh, their skin has
Mhm.
so many wrinkles. That's really not cute.
Mhm.
But yet it's something that I think since we've been taught to like resist these signs on our faces, you know, or like come to, or that have been taught that we should be like fearing them and trying to get them to stop coming,
Mhm.
it's hard for me to completely deprogram myself from that as
Oh
I'm
yeah,
getting older.
definitely. Oh no, like we have to do a whole episode on this because I'm like neurotic. Like when I'm watching
Yeah.
a like a show and there's like a female lead in it, I will 100% always Google her to see how old she is. Like
Mm.
100% because I'm just like I'm
Hmm.
just trying to compare. I'm like, okay, so
Yeah,
so like
that's
if
my
you
thing too. I'm like, I'm just trying to know,
I'm just gonna
and that's what's fucked up too. I'm like, I don't even mind if I get wrinkles, but I want to know if compared to my age, it is normal or if it
right.
is premature. Like, what the fuck does that even mean?
Right, no, same. And I'm just like, okay, let me just like try and position myself in like, okay, like you're this age and you look like this. I'm just trying to figure out like, do I look like an old hag or like do I look like, you know what I mean? I'm just like,
Yeah, and even the idea of old hag is so fucking problematic and ageist.
oh, for sure. But I'm just like trying to, you know what I mean? That like that's in my brain to the point that I
Yeah,
that I actually will Google actresses to see how old they are in relation to me, you know? Like that's messed up.
yeah,
I
totally.
fully admit that that's like 100% messed up. So, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh man.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed this rant.
Yeah, me
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, so I guess that's probably all we have to say for now.
Yeah. And I think, should we announce our next episode for the people who are still listening
Yes.
and perhaps excited?
So the next episode we'll be talking about alternatives to capitalism and addressing some of the questions that we get on our channels, like basically people saying like, okay, but what's the alternative? Tell me now what it is, or just
Mm-hmm.
basically
Or
equating
shut up.
like, or shut up, or saying like, so I guess you want like a bureaucratic totalitarian state where everyone is murdered. Like, yeah, that's what I'm here advocating for. I can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, or people telling me I'm overly like naive overly naive and young little girl. I'm actually excited because I feel like that's something when entering my 30s, maybe I'll get a little bit less.
No, I still
but I
get
all
it.
the time. You what? You get that?
I get it all the time. Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah.
But you look so young, girl. People think you're like 22. See, why are we complimenting each other like that?
I know, honestly, like whenever someone's like, "Oh, I thought you were like 23," I'm just like, "Fuck yeah."
Yeah. I mean, that's fine, but when they're like treating me like a teenager, and I've gotten some super offensive comments about being like, maybe you'll grow out of like your teenhood. But then that's also linked to my weird body image and being afraid to like not look womanly enough.
Yeah.
Man, come in full circle.
So yeah, that'll be next up.
So yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So great.
Cool.
Get excited for that.
Right. Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.